Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through, well, stacks of information to pull out the really interesting stuff for you. Today, we're going on a bit of a journey, actually, into what some people call unconventional tech, maybe even suppressed technologies. These are ideas that, if they're true, could really change how we think about progress, about power, about pretty much everything. We're going to explore this concept our sources call WOTE. Now, hang on, this isn't about nonsense, okay? WOTE here means sensible technologies, things that maybe got overlooked or, and this is the provocative part, may be actively suppressed. And we need to be clear, this is different from WOTE, that's W-O-T-E, which the sources say means wasting our time and energy. So WOTE is the stuff that supposedly is nonsense or maybe even designed to mislead. It's an important distinction to keep in mind as we get into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this deep dive, the sources are, well, they're pretty diverse. We're pulling from discussions about ancient technologies. You know, people like Graham Hancock are big on this, looking at lost civilizations. Joe Rogan's touched on it too. And then we shift to claims about more modern stuff being suppressed. Think Stephen Greer, who's all about disclosing advanced tech. A lot of this framing, especially the woo-tech versus wote idea, comes from a recent YouTube video. It's from Clif High sci-fi world. He's known in some circles for data analysis, looking at trends.
Okay, got it. So our mission today is basically to pull out the key nuggets from all this, right? Find the surprising facts, maybe connect some dots, try to understand why some of this stuff might not be common knowledge. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the ancient side of things. These claims about ancient technologies drawing from that Hancock perspective and similar ideas in the material. The basic idea being, that there was advanced knowledge way back when, knowledge we've just lost somehow.
Yeah, and the material talks about some really intriguing lithographs. Picture this. Images of people. They look like they're playing a game, maybe,
Yeah.
or even fighting. But they're using these metal things, sort of like swords, but in the background, they're these tall, vertical structures, like Tesla coils.
Exactly like Tesla coils.
Yeah, and they're visibly sending out electricity, sparks and things.
Yeah.
The description makes it sound almost like, I don't know, an energy sport, like electric badminton.
Or maybe even like a lightsaber duel, that kind of visual.
Right, the visuals they describe are just, wow,
Yeah.
very thought-provoking. And what's really interesting is the mechanism they propose for how this worked. They talk about an etheric connection, basically pulling electricity right out of the ether, this invisible energy field.
Okay, the ether, like old school physics concepts.
Kind of, yeah. And it supposedly happens through something called dielectric planes. Think of them as like energy pathways, made using specific, complex, geometric shapes in iron or steel. And the key principle, according to this view, is that the electricity doesn't flow inside a wire like we're used to. It crawls around the outside of the conductor.
Actual around the outside.
Yeah. Which, interestingly, they say lines up with conduits you see in some ancient buildings, structures that don't look like they're meant for modern wiring at all. And if you connect that idea, you see these architectural things, right? Towers that stick out of buildings.
Like chimneys.
They look like chimneys, yeah. But the claim is they aren't chimneys. They're supposedly straightforward conduits for this etheric energy. Not for smoke, but for channeling power.
Okay, wow. And bringing it down to something more familiar, fireplaces. The material mentions andirons in fireplaces, shown in some of these lithographs. And they weren't just for holding logs, apparently. They supposedly produced electric radiant heat with no fuel.
Yeah, electric radiant heat.
I mean, who wouldn't want that? Imagine no more propane bills, no firewood.
Exactly. The idea is these andirons, just by their design and material, could tap into this etheric energy and convert it to heat. Fuelless heating.
It's a pretty transformative concept, if true. Okay, so that's the deep past. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the last century or so. Claims of suppressed tech, focusing on what Stephen Greer talks about as presented in our source material. And maybe the most standout example is the Nikola Tesla story, the little box.
Ah, yes, the box.
The claim is Tesla puts this small box in an electric car, no obvious wires, no connection to the normal systems, and it just energizes the motors, lets the car drive all over all day.
That's the story, yeah.
Yeah. Think about the implications. Compared to modern electric cars, the source highlights, 500,000 pounds of earth move for just a few hundred pounds of lithium.
Right. The environmental cost of current batteries.
Exactly. Massively nasty to the planet, they say. Plus, the fires. Lithium batteries can be dangerous.
So this Tesla concept, genuinely batteryless electric cars, it's a total game changer for transport, for energy.
Completely.
And this connects directly to something else in the source material, the concept of new electrics. Apparently, data analysis was predicting this way back in 1997.
Really? 1997?
Yeah, a coming bloom of technology. Fuelless, pollutionless energy. For everything. Cars, planes, cooking,
Hacking too.
everything. And even, get this, electrical healing devices.
Electrical healing. Like what?
Well, they mentioned things like the Russian skinars and also Rife technology, using specific frequencies for healing.
Okay, that's definitely stepping into WOTE territory for many.
It is. But it fits that new electrics paradigm, a different way of thinking about energy and biology. Though there's a catch mentioned about Rife tech. The source suggests it might be invalid now.
Invalid. Why?
Because our environment is saturated with new frequencies, phones, Wi-Fi, all that. So the specific healing frequencies Rife use might need constant recalculation now, making it impractical today. That's the argument presented anyway.
Interesting complication. But okay, if this stuff, the free energy, the healing tech is so potentially amazing, why don't we have it?
Which brings us to, well, a really controversial part of the material. The claim about why it's suppressed. Our source points fingers at a specific group it calls the Khazarian Mafia. Now, we need to be super clear. This is a claim in the source material, a specific and controversial label, not something you hear in mainstream discourse.
Absolutely. It's crucial context. The source alleges this group is powerful, works behind the scenes, and actively suppresses these technologies.
And their motive, according to this source, control. Plain and simple. Control over essential resources, especially energy. Think propane, oil, traditional electricity. If free, clean energy became available, well, it would completely undermine their economic and political power base. That's the alleged reasoning.
Okay, and how do they supposedly suppress it? What methods?
The source describes some pretty intense methods, destroying ancient sites like those Buddhist statues in Afghanistan, which supposedly held clues or secrets about these technologies. Also manipulating narratives, controlling information, maybe even throttling supply chains to stop new energy stuff from getting out.
Wow. Okay, and then there's this idea of resistance in the material. They use an analogy like electrical resistance.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is that attempts to control people, to suppress things, naturally create a counterforce. Resistance builds up. And eventually, that resistance will break through this plane of control. That's the phrasing used. The source observes that even the normies, people who don't usually question things, are starting to sense this dynamic. Something's not right.
Interesting. Okay, so that's the suppression angle. Now let's flip to the other side of the coin the source presented, WOTE, wasting our time and energy, and the prime example given is 5G.
Right. 5G is WOTE.
The argument presented is that 5G, its main goal for this alleged Khazarian mafia, isn't better phone calls, it's tracking.
Yeah, that's the claim.
And the rationale given is, well, it's about the infrastructure. Lots of smaller, lower power towers replacing the big, powerful 4G ones. The source says this shift happened in a way that everyone didn't understand the real implication.
And technically, it's kind of fascinating how its limitations supposedly help with tracking. 5G uses millimeter waves. They don't have a lot of punch. They only penetrate the skin a tiny bit.
Okay.
And crucially, the source emphasizes it does not do well with anything that's got water in it. Water absorbs the signal really easily.
So bad for communication in rain or humidity.
Exactly. They mention real problems, like trying to use it in humid places, temperate rainforests. Apparently, it's a nightmare. The source even cites stats like nearly 1,000% increase in tech problems compared to 4G.
1,000%. Wow.
Yeah. And even weird practical stuff, like apparently bird droppings accumulating on the transponders can mess up the signal so badly the towers fail.
You're kidding. Bird poop.
That's what the source claims. Because the signals are so precise, any little obstruction is a problem. Requires constant cleaning or replacing parts.
Okay, so if it's that problematic for communication, how does it work for tracking? That seems counterintuitive.
Well, the explanation goes like this. Because the waves are so sensitive to water, they can detect bags of water moving through the signal field.
Bags of water, meaning us, humans.
Pretty much, yeah. Humans are mostly water. So as you move, you disrupt the signal pattern, creating a sort of dark cone or shadow in the field. And by analyzing these disruptions across the network of towers, the system can supposedly track your movement very precisely.
Ah, okay. So it's not mind control, not reaching into your brain, as the source puts it.
No, nothing like that. The claim is specifically about location tracking, knowing where the bags of water are.
Gotcha. And the source even gives some unusual advice for listeners about 5G.
It does, yeah. A bit tongue-in-cheek, maybe, but it says, just don't go touching the towers.
Right.
And carry a spray bottle.
A spray bottle, what?
To spray water into the air around you. The idea being saturating the air with water interferes with the signal, potentially messing up the tracking resolution. Practical WOTE advice, I guess.
Okay, that's certainly practical. All right, connecting this back to the bigger picture.
Right. All this stuff coming out, the suppressed tech claims, the tracking concerns, it all fits into what the source calls the big ugly period.
The big ugly.
Yeah. A time of major upheaval where uncomfortable truths and challenging information start surfacing, disrupting the status quo. And this includes some really, really contrarian takes, like the claim in the material that the biosphere is not at risk from human activity.
Wait, what? Not at risk.
That's the claim. The source argues humanity could literally all fit, with room to spare, into the top of Texas.
Yeah.
It frames the whole climate change narrative as a bill of goods, something sold to us by people seeking control, not an actual existential threat.
Wow. Okay, that is definitely running counter to mainstream understanding. That's a huge claim. And I imagine for people hearing this, it's part of that difficult wake-up moment. The source mentions that, quote, "It's easier to fool a person than to convince a person that he has been fooled." That must resonate here.
Absolutely. It challenges deeply held beliefs.
And the source even gives this strange example of unconventional responses. This trans-reincarnationist idea.
Yeah, it's presented as someone saying, basically, I've lived before, I'll live again, so these current environmental rules don't really apply to my eternal soul. A very out there way, the source implies, of pushing back against mandates. Shows how weird the reactions can get.
Okay, so massive upheaval, challenging ideas, but also maybe opportunity. This links back to the new electrics, right?
Exactly. The source suggests this upheaval is tied to the emergence of these new energy forms. It'll take decades to fully integrate, they say, but it's starting now.
And didn't the data analysis predict something else about space aliens?
Yeah, that was fascinating. The prediction was that widespread talk about space aliens would become more common after the new electrics start hitting public consciousness.
After, not before.
After. As if understanding or accessing this new energy somehow opens the door to broader cosmic awareness. Or maybe it's just that the powers that be shift focus. It implies a sequence, energy first, then maybe ETs.
Interesting sequence. And are there signs now, real-world examples that this WOTE is bubbling up?
The source points to anecdotal stuff, like reports of a kid in Nigeria who supposedly built self-powering devices taking electricity out of the air.
Just pulling power from the air.
That's the kind of story presented as a sign. Whether verifiable or not, it's seen as an indicator that maybe WOTE is just around the corner. These ideas are breaking through.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, the core message seems to be potential turning point, a moment where suppressed, beneficial technologies might be resurfacing, challenging the old guard, maybe leading to, well, something very different.
It really does suggest that. And it brings up the meaning of woo itself in woo tech. The source explains woo not just as, strange or out there, but as a deep philosophy, a love of understanding, of knowledge itself, not necessarily physical action, but the pursuit of knowledge.
So engaging with these ideas, even just thinking about them, has value.
That seems to be the perspective, that the act of questioning, of seeking understanding is important.
Which leaves us with maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. What if the very act of seeking out and trying to understand these woo concepts? What if that is the real resistance? Could exploring these ideas actually be a way to, well, bind humanity together against forces that might seek to control information and progress? Something to consider. Stay curious, stay woo, perhaps, and definitely maintain your situational awareness.